Imagine this. You're standing in a room filled with faces you once trusted, but now their eyes cut through you like blades. They whisper behind your back, plotting to undermine your every move. These are not strangers. They were allies, confidants, even friends. But somewhere along the way, trust fractured. And now, they are your enemies. Your instinct screams to strike back, to expose their betrayal, to burn bridges and walk away. But what if there was another way? What if, instead of destroying them, you could turn these enemies into your greatest allies? What if the very people who oppose you could become the key to your triumph? This is not a fantasy. It's a paradox rooted in the cunning mind of Niccolo Machiavelli, the 16th century philosopher who saw human nature not as it should be, but as it is. Machiavelli didn't believe in enemies as permanent fixtures. He saw them as opportunities, raw material to be shaped. But here's the unsettling question. Why do we instinctively push away those who challenge us? Why do we let pride, anger, or fear dictate our response, when the sharper move might be to draw them closer? Pause and think. Have you ever considered that your enemies know you better than your friends? They see your flaws, your weaknesses, the chinks in your armor that your allies politely ignore. What if their opposition holds the key to your growth, your power, your survival? This paradox gnaws at you because it defies everything you've been taught. Society tells you to cut toxic people out, to surround yourself with those who lift you up. But Machiavelli whispers something darker, more dangerous. Your enemies are not obstacles. They are mirrors. They reflect truths you'd rather not face. To destroy them is to destroy a part of yourself. To convert them is to master both them and you. But how? How do you take someone who despises you, who schemes against you, and transform them into an ally who fights for you? The answer lies not in brute force or manipulation, but in a deeper understanding of human nature, a truth so potent it can shift the tides of any conflict. Consider this. Every enemy you've ever had was once a neutral stranger. Something, jealousy, misunderstanding, or clashing ambitions turned them against you. What if that same dynamic could be reversed? What if you could rewrite the story of your rivalry, not with swords, but with strategy? Machiavelli believed that power is not about crushing opposition, but about redirecting it. The question isn't whether you can turn enemies into allies, it's whether you have the courage to try. Because to do so, you'll need to face uncomfortable truths about yourself, about power, about the games we all play in the shadows of our relationships. This isn't just about personal grudges. Think bigger. In your career, your community, your life, enemies lurk in the form of rivals, critics, or those who simply don't see your vision. They hold influence, resources, or knowledge you need. Destroying them might feel satisfying, but it leaves you poorer. Converting them? That's the alchemy of power. It's what separates the impulsive from the strategic, the weak from the unstoppable. So, as you stand in that room, surrounded by those who oppose you, ask yourself, are you ready to play Machiavelli's game? Are you ready to see your enemies not as threats, but as untapped potential? The answer begins with understanding why this game exists in the first place. A truth so subtle, yet so pervasive, it shapes every conflict you've ever faced. Let's step into the shadows and uncover it. You felt it before, the sting of betrayal, the slow burn of resentment when someone turns against you. It's visceral, primal, like a wound that demands retaliation. But why do we default to this? Why does the mere existence of an enemy ignite a fire within us that blinds us to any path but conflict? The answer lies in a hidden force, one that Machiavelli understood with chilling clarity: the human ego. Our sense of self, fragile yet ferocious, transforms disagreement into warfare. To understand how to turn enemies into allies, you must first confront this invisible puppeteer pulling your strings. Carl Jung would call this the shadow, the part of you that harbors pride, insecurity, and the need to dominate. Your enemy isn't just a person. They're a projection of your shadow, a living embodiment of everything you fear or refuse to acknowledge. When they challenge you, they're not just attacking your position. They're threatening your identity. This is why your first instinct is to push back, to prove them wrong, to win. But Nietzsche would argue that this reaction is weakness masquerading as strength. True power, he'd say, lies in mastering yourself, not in crushing others. Machiavelli takes this further. Your enemy is not your problem. Your inability to see them as anything but an enemy is. This psychological trap has philosophical roots. Schopenhauer believed that human suffering stems from our will, the relentless drive to assert ourselves over others. When someone opposes you, their will clashes with yours, and the result is enmity. But what if you could redirect that will? What if instead of clashing, you could align their desires with yours? This is where Machiavelli's genius shines. He saw humans as driven by self-interest, not morality. Your enemy doesn't hate you for the sake of hatred. They oppose you because they believe it serves them. The hidden problem is that you're fighting their actions instead of understanding their motives. Consider the societal forces at play. We're conditioned to see life as a zero-sum game. Your loss is my gain. Your success is my failure. This scarcity mindset fuels rivalries, turning colleagues into competitors, friends into foes. But Machiavelli rejected this. He saw power as a chessboard, not a battlefield. Every piece, even the one threatening your king, can be maneuvered to your advantage. The problem isn't that enemies exist. It's that you've been taught to fear them, to see them as fixed threats rather than fluid opportunities. This mindset is reinforced by cognitive biases. Confirmation bias makes you focus on your enemy's flaws, ignoring their strengths or potential. The fundamental attribution error leads you to see their opposition as personal malice, not a product of circumstance. These biases blind you to the truth. Your enemy is as human as you, driven by the same fears, desires, and insecurities. Jung would urge you to integrate this truth, to see your enemy as a reflection of your own complexity. Sartre would push you further, arguing that hell is other people only when you let them define you. The philosophical root of this problem is clear. Your enemy is not the issue. Your perception of them is. This perception has consequences, ones you may not yet see. Every time you choose conflict over strategy, you're not just fighting a person. You're reinforcing a cycle that keeps you trapped. You're letting your ego, your shadow, dictate your reality. And the cost is higher than you think. As we move deeper, you'll see how this hidden problem doesn't just shape your relationships. It silently controls your entire life. Every time you choose to fight, to resent, to push them away, you're not just losing an opportunity. You're reinforcing a pattern that keeps you small, reactive, and trapped. The unseen consequences of this mindset ripple through your psyche, your relationships, and your potential, like a stone dropped in still water. Let's start with your mind. Neurologically, conflict triggers your amygdala, flooding your brain with cortisol and adrenaline. This fight-or-flight response clouds your judgment, making you impulsive, defensive, even irrational. You think you're protecting yourself, but you're actually surrendering control to your biology. Over time, this becomes a habit. You start seeing threats everywhere, turning neutral situations into battles. Confirmation bias amplifies this. You notice every slight, every criticism, while ignoring chances for collaboration. The result? A life lived in a constant state of siege, where every interaction feels like a test you must pass. This isn't just movies, books, even social media celebrate crushing your enemies, not converting them. This conditioning makes you blind to the cost of conflict. Every enemy you alienate is a door you've slammed shut, a connection, a resource, a perspective you'll never access. In a hyper-connected world, this is suicide. Your enemies often hold the keys to what you need: influence, knowledge, opportunities. By fighting them, you're cutting yourself off from the very network that could elevate you. Consider the cognitive toll. The Dunning-Kruger effect shows that people overestimate their competence while underestimating others. You might think you're outsmarting your enemy, but their opposition often reveals blind spots you can't see. They challenge your assumptions, force you to refine your ideas. By dismissing them, you're stunting your growth. Worse, you're feeding a scarcity mindset, the belief that there's not enough success, respect, or power to go around. This mindset doesn't just isolate you, it makes you brittle, unable to adapt when life inevitably shifts. The societal consequences are just as stark. Look at history. Civilizations fall when factions refuse to reconcile. The Roman Republic collapsed not because of external enemies, but because internal rivals, Caesar, Pompey, Crassus, couldn't turn opposition into alliance. Today, workplaces, communities, even families fracture for the same reason. Your refusal to engage with your enemy doesn't just harm you, it poisons the systems you're part of. You're not just fighting a person, you're perpetuating a cycle of division that weakens everyone. But the deepest consequence is existential. Viktor Frankl, the Holocaust survivor and philosopher, argued that life's meaning comes from how we respond to suffering. Your enemies are your suffering. They test your resilience, your wisdom, your humanity. By reacting with anger or avoidance, you're failing that test. You're letting them define your Sartre would call this bad faith, living inauthentically, letting external forces shape who you are. The longer you see enemies as threats, the more you lose yourself to them. This is the urgency. Every moment you spend fighting your enemies, you're not just wasting energy, you're losing time, clarity, and purpose. You're building a life defined by conflict, not creation. But there's a way out. A rebellion is brewing, a radical shift that Machiavelli mastered centuries ago. It's not about surrender or manipulation. It's about seeing your enemies for what they truly are, potential allies waiting to be unlocked. The question is, are you ready to break free from the trap that's held you back? Let's find out. You've been fighting the wrong war. All this time, you've seen your enemies as walls to tear down, when they're actually bridges waiting to be crossed. This is the rebellion Machiavelli would urge you to embrace, a radical shift in how you see conflict, power, and human nature. To turn enemies into allies, you don't need to change them. You need to change yourself. This isn't about weakness or compromise. It's about strategy, the kind that rewrites the rules of the game. Let's unravel how to break free from the cycle of enmity and claim the power that's been yours all along. First, you must reframe your enemy. Stop seeing them as a monolith of malice. Machiavelli taught that every human is driven by self-interest, fear, ambition, pride. Your enemy opposes you because they believe it serves them. Your job is to shift their calculus, to make alliance more appealing than conflict. This starts with empathy, not as a moral virtue, but as a weapon. Understand their motives. What do they want? Security? Recognition? Revenge? Once you know their desires, you can offer a path that aligns their interests with yours. This is what Machiavelli did when he advised princes to turn rivals into advisors, binding their fates together. Consider a historical example, Abraham Lincoln. During the Civil War, he faced fierce opponents within his own government, men like Edwin Stanton, who once called him a long-armed ape. Instead of sidelining Stanton, Lincoln appointed him Secretary of War. Why? Because he saw Stanton's brilliance, his drive, his potential. By giving Stanton a stake in his vision, Lincoln turned a critic into a cornerstone of his administration. This is Machiavellian alchemy. Identify your enemy's strengths, then give them a reason to use those strengths for you. But empathy alone isn't enough. You must master the art of perception. Machiavelli wrote that men judge by appearances. Your enemy's hostility often stems from how they see you: weak, threatening, or untrustworthy. Change that perception. Project confidence, not arrogance; openness, not defensiveness. Small gestures matter. A sincere. These don't weaken you. They disarm your enemy, making them question their opposition. Psychologically, this leverages the reciprocity principle. People feel obligated to return favors. By extending an olive branch, you plant a seed of doubt in their enmity. Timing is critical. Machiavelli warned against acting too soon or too late. Strike when your enemy is vulnerable, when they've lost something, when their plans have faltered. Offer a solution to their problem, one that benefits you both. This isn't manipulation, it's mutual gain. For example, in a workplace rivalry, if your critic fails to secure a project, step in with an offer to collaborate on the next one. Frame it as a win-win, but ensure the terms favor you. This is how you turn their defeat into your alliance. But the deepest rebellion is internal. Jung would argue that your enemy is a projection of your shadow, the parts of yourself you reject. Their criticism, their opposition, often mirrors your insecurities. To break free, you must face this shadow. Ask yourself, why does this enemy trigger you? What truth in their opposition are you avoiding? By integrating this truth, you not only neutralize their power over you, you grow stronger. Nietzsche would call this self-overcoming, the path to true power. When you no longer fear your enemy's judgment, you're free to engage them strategically, not emotionally. This rebellion isn't easy. It demands discipline, patience, and a willingness to let go of pride. But the reward is immense. You stop being a victim of conflict and become its master. You stop reacting and start directing. Every enemy you convert becomes a testament to your power. Not the power to destroy, but the power to create. As we move to the final truth, you'll see why this rebellion isn't just a strategy. It's a way of life that redefines everything you thought you knew about power, conflict, and yourself. You've been chasing the wrong kind of power. All your life, you've equated power with dominance, crushing your enemies, proving your worth, standing alone at the top. But Machiavelli's ultimate truth, the one that can turn enemies into allies, is far more profound. True power is the ability to create unity where there was division, to forge strength from conflict, to build a world where even your opponents fight for you. This isn't just a strategy. It's a paradigm shift that redefines how you see yourself, your relationships, and your place in the universe. This truth begins with a revelation. Your enemies are not separate from you. They are part of the same human tapestry, driven by the same fears and desires. Jung would say they are your shadow made flesh, reflecting the parts of yourself you've yet to master. Sartre would argue that you give them power by letting their opposition define you. But Machiavelli offers a way out. See them as partners in a larger game. Their hostility is not a barrier, it's an invitation to play smarter, to weave their ambitions into your vision. This is the alchemy of power, not subtraction, but addition. Consider the story of Nelson Mandela. Imprisoned for 27 years, he faced enemies who sought to crush him, oppressors, jailers, a system built on hatred. Yet when he emerged, he didn't seek revenge. He invited his enemies to the table, offering them a stake in a new South Africa. By doing so, he didn't just end apartheid. He created a nation. This is Machiavellian genius at its peak. Power doesn't come from destroying your enemies, but from making their success dependent on yours. When your enemy's fate is tied to your victory, they have no choice but to become your ally. This truth is psychologically liberating. When you stop seeing enemies as threats, you free yourself from fear. Neurologically, this shifts you from the amygdala's grip to the prefrontal cortex, where strategy and creativity thrive. You start seeing patterns, opportunities, connections where others see only chaos. This is what Aldous Huxley meant when he warned against the slavery of division. When you're trapped in conflict, you're not free. True freedom comes from transcending the us versus them mindset, from seeing the world as a web of potential alliances. But this requires a final, haunting realization. To turn enemies into allies, you must let go of your need to be right. Pride is the silent killer of power. It blinds you to compromise, to collaboration, to the bigger picture. Machiavelli knew this. His princes didn't win by being morally superior, but by being adaptable. Ask yourself, what's more important? Proving your enemy wrong, or building a future where they serve your purpose? This question cuts to the core of who you are. It's not just about strategy. It's about identity. Are you willing to redefine yourself as someone who creates rather than destroys? This truth redefines reality itself. Every conflict, every rivalry, every betrayal becomes an opportunity to grow, to connect, to wield power in ways others can't imagine. You stop living in a world of enemies and start living in a world of possibilities. This is the cinematic moment where the music swells, where the camera pans out, and you see the chessboard of your life for the first time, not as a battle to be won, but as a masterpiece to be crafted. Your enemies are no longer your doom. They are your canvas. As you stand at this crossroads, reflect on the faces of those who oppose you. See them not as threats, but as challenges, as invitations to become more than you are. The ultimate truth is this: power is not taken, it is created. And the greatest power of all is the ability to turn division into unity, to make even your enemies part of your legacy. Step forward, strategist, and claim it. You've walked through the shadows of conflict, faced the paradox of enmity, and uncovered a truth that changes everything. Your enemies are not your end, but your beginning. Machiavelli's wisdom has shown you that power isn't about destruction, it's about creation, about turning opposition into alliance, chaos into order. Every rival, every critic, every betrayer is a chance to rewrite the story of your life. You're no longer a victim of their hostility. You're the architect of their allegiance. This isn't just a strategy, it's a way of life. The next time you face an enemy, pause. See their motives, their fears, their desires. Offer them a path where their success is tied to yours. Let go of pride, of the need to be right, and watch how the world bends to your will. This is the power Machiavelli promised, not the power to dominate, but the power to shape. Now, take this truth and apply it. Look at the conflicts in your life, professional, personal, internal. Who is your enemy? What's stopping you from turning them into an ally? Reflect on this, because the moment you start seeing opposition as opportunity, your life will never be the same. You'll move through the world with a quiet confidence, knowing that no one, no matter how hostile, can stand outside your influence. Here's your challenge. Act on this today. Reach out to someone who's opposed you, a colleague, a friend, even a stranger. Start small, a conversation, a gesture, a question. Plant the seed of alliance and watch it grow. Then come back and share your story in the comments. How did it feel to shift the dynamic? What did you learn about them? About yourself? Your experience could inspire someone else to break free from their own cycle of conflict. If this resonated with you, hit that like button. It tells us you want more of this kind of content. Subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into the strategies that shape your life. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it, maybe even an enemy you're ready to transform. The world needs more creators, more strategists, more people like you who see conflict not as a dead end, but as a doorway. Step through it. The game is yours to play.